Have you ever wondered how a single canal could ignite a global crisis, altering the course of history? Let's delve into the Suez Crisis of 1956, a paramount event that reshaped international relations. Welcome to Cultural Contours, where we unravel the fascinating layers of history. The year is 1956. The location, a man-made waterway connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, the Suez Canal. A marvel of engineering, the Suez Canal was more than just a shipping route. It was a symbol of global commerce, a vital link between East and West. Imagine the world's goods flowing like a river through this slender strip of water, shortening the journey between Europe and Asia by thousands of miles. It was a lifeline for trade, and as such a point of global strategic importance. But the Suez Canal was not merely a conduit for goods. It was also a source of national pride for the Egyptians, a testament to their country's pivotal position on the world stage. Yet, for all its significance, the canal was not in Egyptian hands. Since its construction in the mid-19th century by the French engineer Ferdinand de Lesseps, it had been under foreign control, primarily by the British and French. This was a sore point, a thorn in the side of Egyptian nationalism. And it was this thorn that would prick the pride of one man in particular, Gamal Abdel Nasser, the charismatic leader of Egypt. In the summer of 1956, Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, taking it out of foreign hands and placing it firmly under Egyptian control. The nationalization of the Suez Canal was seen as an affront by the British and French, who had long viewed the canal as their own. It was a slap in the face, a challenge to their dominance, and it was a challenge they were not willing to take lying down. So the British and French, along with their ally Israel, began to plot. They hatched a plan to invade Egypt, to seize back control of the Suez Canal. The world would soon be on the brink of a major international crisis, with the Suez Canal at its epicenter. The stage was set for a major international crisis. The spark that ignited this crisis was a bold move by one man, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. A name that would echo down the corridors of history, Nasser was a man of conviction, unafraid to take decisive actions that would shape the destiny of his country. In the scorching summer of 1956, he made a decision that would send shockwaves around the globe. The Suez Canal, a man-made waterway connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, had long been a symbol of Western control in the region. It was a strategic artery for global trade, with over two-thirds of Europe's oil passing through it. Yet it was owned and operated by a private French and British company. Nasser saw this as an affront to Egyptian sovereignty, a relic of colonial times that had no place in the modern world. Nasser had grand plans for his nation. He envisioned a modern Egypt, free from foreign interference, standing tall among the world's nations. But to realize this vision, he needed funds. Funds that the West was unwilling to provide. The Aswan Dam, a project close to Nasser's heart, had been denied funding by both the United States and the United Kingdom. In response, Nasser decided to take matters into his own hands. On July the 26th, 1956, he announced the nationalization of the Suez Canal, a move that stunned the world. He declared that the revenues from the canal would be used to fund the Aswan Dam. It was a bold, audacious move, a clear message to the world that Egypt would no longer be a pawn in the hands of foreign powers. The West was taken aback. Nasser's move was seen as a direct challenge to their authority and control. It was a slap in the face for the British and French, a clear signal that the old order was changing. This move set off a chain of events that would shake the world. The stage was now set for a conflict that would not only reshape the Middle East, but also redefine the global balance of power. In response to Nasser's decision, three nations decided to take action: Israel, the United Kingdom, and France. Now, let's delve into the details of this pivotal moment in history. On October 29, 1956, Israel initiated the invasion, launching a surprise attack on the Sinai Peninsula. Their military strategy was ingenious yet straightforward. They aimed to cut off the Sinai from the rest of Egypt, effectively isolating the region. Swift and decisive, Israel seized control of the peninsula in a matter of days. The United Kingdom and France, however, had a different approach. They didn't join the fray immediately. Instead, they proposed an ultimatum, demanding both Egypt and Israel to cease fighting and withdraw 10 miles from the Suez Canal. A ploy, some might say, as they knew Nasser would reject such terms, and when he did, it gave them the pretext to step into the conflict under the guise of peacekeeping. The British and French forces initiated their operation on November 5, 1956, with a series of airstrikes against Egyptian airfields. This was swiftly followed by a seaborne invasion, their target, the Suez Canal. Their military strategy was clear: regain control of the canal and, in doing so, depose Nasser. The initial outcomes were in favor of the invaders. Israel had effectively taken control of Sinai, while British and French forces had secured the northern part of the Suez Canal. It seemed as if their military strategies were working. But history, as we know, is rarely straightforward. The world was watching, and the reactions were mixed. The invasion sparked outrage in some quarters, while others applauded the decisive actions of the three nations. Meanwhile, the United Nations was gearing up to intervene. The stage was set for a geopolitical showdown of epic proportions. These events marked the beginning of the Suez Crisis. The world was about to witness a conflict that would reshape the Middle East and redefine the dynamics of global politics. But that, dear listeners, is a story for another time. For now, let's take a moment to reflect on the audacity, the cunning, and the sheer complexity of the Suez invasion. The invasion of Egypt had profound global repercussions. The reverberations of this pivotal event were not confined to the shores of the Suez Canal or the borders of Egypt. They echoed throughout the halls of power across the globe, shaping the international political landscape in ways that still impact us today. The United Nations, established a mere decade earlier, found itself in the midst of its first real test. The UN General Assembly convened an emergency session and, following heated debates and diplomatic maneuvering, adopted a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire. This marked the first time that the UN's Uniting for Peace resolution was invoked, setting a precedent for future conflicts. The UN's role in the resolution of the Suez Crisis heralded its emergence as a significant player on the world stage, capable of mediating in large-scale international disputes. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States found itself in an uncomfortable position. The Cold War was in full swing, and the US, a staunch ally of both the United Kingdom and France, was caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, it didn't want to alienate its allies, but on the other, it was wary of the domino effect of colonialism in the context of the emerging decolonization movements. Ultimately, President Eisenhower decided to condemn the invasion, citing principles of peaceful coexistence and self-determination. This marked a turning point in US foreign policy, reflecting its commitment to a new world order where colonialism had no place. Concurrently, the Soviet Union, the other superpower in the bipolar world of the Cold War, seized this opportunity to flex its diplomatic muscles. Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet premier, threatened to launch rockets at Paris and London if the invasion was not halted. While these threats were never acted upon, they sent a resounding message about the Soviets' willingness to assert their power on the global stage. The Suez Crisis hence also marked a significant moment in the Cold War, heightening tensions between the superpowers and shaping their future interactions. As the dust settled on the Suez Canal, the world had changed. The old colonial powers had been humbled, the United Nations had emerged as a global peacekeeping force, and the superpowers had drawn their lines in the sand. The balance of power had shifted, and the stage was set for a new era in international relations. In this new world order, the Suez Crisis served as a stark reminder of the dangers of colonial ambition and the importance of international cooperation. It was a catalyst for change, pushing nations towards self-determination and underscoring the role of international bodies like the UN in conflict resolution. It was clear that the Suez Crisis had far-reaching implications. Its echoes continue to resonate in our world today, shaping the contours of our cultural and geopolitical landscape. By early 1957, the crisis reached its climax. The world held its breath as the Suez Canal, the lifeline of international trade, was ensnared in the grip of a political and military stalemate. But as the pressures of international diplomacy and public opinion mounted, the invading forces of Israel, the United Kingdom and France began to withdraw. The United Nations, playing an instrumental role in resolving the crisis, established its first peacekeeping force, the United Nations Emergency Force. This force was composed of personnel from several countries, including Brazil, Canada, Colombia, Denmark and India, among others. Their mandate? To supervise the cessation of hostilities and ensure the peaceful withdrawal of the foreign troops from Egyptian territory. The job was a challenging one. The UNEF had to navigate the volatile landscape of post-invasion Egypt, mediating between the withdrawing forces and the Egyptian government. Their role was not just to maintain peace, but also to rebuild trust. And they did so with an unwavering dedication that set the precedent for future UN peacekeeping missions. As the last of the foreign soldiers left Egyptian soil, the Suez Canal, battered and blocked, was finally free. But its troubles were far from over. It was a monumental task to clear the wreckage and restore the canal to its former glory. Yet, under the resolute leadership of the Egyptian authorities, the canal was repaired and reopened for navigation in less than 6 months. A true testament to the resilience and determination of the Egyptian people. The return of the canal to Egyptian control marked a significant turning point. It signified the end of colonial dominance and the dawn of a new era in which countries, regardless of their size or power, could assert their sovereignty and resist foreign intervention. The Suez Crisis was not just a dispute over a strategic waterway, it was a struggle for national dignity and self-determination. And so, after months of tension, conflict and uncertainty, the Suez Crisis had finally come to an end. The Suez Crisis left a lasting impact on the nations involved and the world at large. The aftermath of the crisis rewrote the geopolitical landscape in ways that still resonate today. The United Kingdom and France, once considered global powerhouses, found their influence significantly diminished. Economically drained and politically isolated, they were forced to re-evaluate their roles on the world stage. In contrast, the United States and the Soviet Union, who had both opposed the invasion, emerged stronger, their status as global superpowers solidified. Israel, though it had achieved its initial military objectives, was compelled to withdraw without any concrete guarantees of future security. The crisis had exposed its vulnerability and underscored the necessity of strong alliances. But it was Egypt that experienced perhaps the most profound transformation. The Suez Crisis ignited a surge of nationalism as the nation celebrated its successful resistance against foreign control. President Gamal Abdel Nasser emerged from the crisis as a symbol of Arab unity and resistance to Western imperialism, his popularity soaring not only in Egypt, but throughout the Arab world. The Suez Canal, the heart of the conflict, was nationalized and became a symbol of Egypt's sovereignty. The revenue generated from the canal played a crucial role in the country's economic development, funding infrastructure projects and promoting industrial growth. The crisis also marked a significant shift in the dynamics of the Middle East. It brought the Arab-Israeli conflict into sharper focus, setting the stage for future confrontations. The rise of Arab nationalism and the increased Soviet involvement in the region further complicated the geopolitical landscape. And then there was the United Nations. The crisis underscored the organization's role in maintaining international peace. It was a test of its ability to manage global conflicts, and despite some shortcomings, it emerged as a key player in resolving international disputes. The ripples of the Suez Crisis can still be felt today. The geopolitical shifts it triggered, the rise of nationalism, and the new power dynamics it established continue to shape the world we live in. Indeed, the Suez Crisis was not just a moment in history, it was a turning point. The Suez Crisis is more than just a chapter in history books. It's a riveting tale of ambition, power, and the delicate dance of international politics. A tale that, in many ways, continues to resonate in our global landscape today. The Suez Crisis unfolded over half a century ago, yet the echoes of its lessons can still be heard, reminding us of the intricate threads that weave the tapestry of our world. In the aftermath of the Suez Crisis, the world had to take a long, hard look at the concept of colonialism and the balance of power. The crisis highlighted the waning influence of traditional colonial powers like Britain and France, and the rising clout of the United States and the Soviet Union. It served as a wake-up call for nations clinging to the remnants of a bygone era, an era where might made right and the world map was a chessboard for the powerful. The crisis also underscored the importance of diplomacy and negotiation. The United Nations, then a relatively young entity, played a pivotal role in resolving the conflict. The Suez Crisis was a trial by fire for the UN, testing its mettle and its ability to mediate in matters of global importance. And while the path was fraught with challenges, the UN emerged stronger, more robust and more relevant. But perhaps the most profound lesson from the Suez Crisis is the resilience of nations and the indomitable spirit of their people. Egypt, a nation caught between the hammer of colonial ambition and the anvil of geopolitical maneuvering, held its ground. The crisis marked a significant turning point for Egypt, reinforcing its sovereignty and its place on the global stage. The Suez Crisis also served as a reminder of the strategic importance of geographical locations. The Suez Canal, a man-made waterway, became the fulcrum of a global crisis, underscoring the role geography can play in international relations. Its relevance has not waned in today's world, where strategic locations like the South China Sea and the Strait of Hormuz continue to be hotspots of global tension. But perhaps the most relevant takeaway from the Suez Crisis is its illustration of the intricate and interwoven nature of our world. A crisis in a canal in Egypt drew in countries from different continents, each with their interests and agendas. It's a stark reminder of how interconnected our world is, a fact that rings even truer in today's era of globalization and digital connectivity. As we close today's journey through the Suez Crisis, remember, history is not just about the past, it shapes our present and future. This is Cultural Contours, where history comes alive.